Gavin Cole hadn't meant to bleed in front of the alien students. In fact, he'd spent the first 3 weeks on board the Taryllion Educational Exchange Vessel doing everything he could to avoid any sort of incident. No loud chewing, no unsolicited touching, and definitely no references to Earth's more violent history. He even stopped cracking his knuckles after one of the Valerians mistook the sound for bone fracturing and nearly passed out. But on the 22nd day, while helping install a temporary gravity stabilizer panel in one of the observation rings, the universe decided it had been long enough without drama. Gavin's glove snagged on a sharp seam of the exposed metal. He yanked his hand back, felt the glove tear, and then a biting sting across his palm. He looked down and saw his skin split open, a red line from just below his thumb to the bottom of his wrist. "Ah, come on," he muttered, trying to keep pressure on the wound with his other hand. Across from him, 3 alien cadets stared in frozen silence. They were part of a small interspecies pilot program aboard the Taryllion ship, and Gavin had been assigned to them as a liaison instructor not because he was the best, but because he was the only one who volunteered to live 6 months on a ship full of curious, well-meaning extraterrestrials. Zurich, the tallest of the group, stood stock still, his large yellow eyes wide and unblinking. The other 2, a pale, frilled creature named Mib and a squat, scale-covered one called Dren, didn't move either. All 3 stared at Gavin's bleeding hand like it was a live grenade. "Okay, not a big deal," Gavin said, voice tight. "Just a cut. Happens to humans sometimes." "You are leaking," Zurich said, voice low, as if he were afraid of triggering an explosion. "That's blood," Gavin said, reaching for the small utility pouch on his belt. "Perfectly normal. Well, not ideal, but not fatal or anything." Mib let out a high-pitched trill. "Your dermal integrity has failed. You are ruptured." "Yeah, that's one way to put it." Gavin fumbled one-handed through the pouch, finally pulling out the first aid kit. He sat down slowly, not wanting to alarm them further. His hand was throbbing now and blood was pooling in his palm. Dren turned and made a choking sound. "This is not acceptable. You must be taken to the medbay. Immediately. If I go to the medbay every time I get a cut, I'll never leave," Gavin muttered, tearing open the antiseptic wipe. "Seriously, this is under control." He winced as he cleaned the wound, glancing up to see all 3 aliens watching like they were witnessing a public execution. Gavin applied a bandage, wrapped it tightly, and flexed his fingers. The pain flared, but he could still move it. "There. See?" He held up the wrapped hand. "Good as new." Zurich's voice was trembling. "You repaired yourself." "First aid kit," Gavin said. "Basic field supply. You'd be amazed what a little gauze and antiseptic can do." Mib stepped closer, eyes still locked on the bandage. "But your internal fluids. You have lost some. Is that not damaging?" "Well, yeah," Gavin said. "Too much blood loss is bad. But this is maybe a few teaspoons. I've donated more than that voluntarily." Dren's frills pulsed in agitation. "You give your blood away?" "Sure. Hospitals need it. People get sick, injured. We donate so they can live." The 3 stared at him again, this time with something that looked like a mix of horror and awe. Gavin stood gingerly, rotating his wrist to make sure the bandage held. "Listen, I appreciate the concern, but I've been through worse. Not here to impress anyone. Just trying to finish this stabilizer before dinner." Mib blinked rapidly. "You will continue working?" "Well, I'm not going to juggle knives, but yeah, this hand's still good." He held up the uninjured one and gave them a thumbs up. Dren turned and walked away without a word. Gavin frowned. "Was it something I said?" Zurich followed Dren silently. Mib lingered for a moment, then spoke softly. "You were torn open and did not seek assistance. You administered your own treatment, and now you continue as if nothing occurred." Gavin shrugged. "There's work to do. And I'm not dead. That helps." Mib looked at him like he was an ancient war relic come to life, then turned and followed the others down the corridor. Later that evening, Gavin sat in the mess hall, hands still throbbing under the bandage, when Commander Kirill sank into the seat across from him. The Taryllion commander had the long, fluid form of his species, with translucent skin that shimmered faintly in the overhead lights. "We have received reports from your students," Kirill said. "They are unsettled." "Yeah, I figured," Gavin said, chewing slowly. "Didn't mean to scare them. Just a cut. There was blood." "There usually is, yeah." Kirill studied him. "They assumed you would perish." Gavin set down his fork. "I didn't realize how squeamish they were. I'll walk them through it tomorrow. Maybe a little Earth Anatomy 101. They believe you to be unstable." Gavin barked a laugh, then winced as it pulled at his bandaged hand. "Maybe I am. But I'm functional." Kirill tilted his head. "You were not alarmed." "I was. I just didn't panic. There's a difference." The commander sat back. "They asked to be reassigned." Gavin's smile faded. "Seriously, they believe you are dangerous, capable of irreversible self-harm without emotional response." Gavin rubbed his temple with his good hand. "That's not what happened. I got hurt and fixed it. That's called being responsible." "I know," Kirill said. "But your species continues to challenge expectations." The next day, Gavin called his students to the briefing room. Only Zurich showed up on time. Mib arrived 5 minutes later, hesitating in the doorway. Dren did not come at all. "All right," Gavin said. "Let's talk about what happened yesterday." Zurich stood stiffly. "You were injured." "We were not prepared." "Neither was I," Gavin said. "But injuries happen. That's why we train for them. That's why we carry first aid kits." Mib looked down. "We do not. Our medical systems are centralized. Injuries are handled by professionals." "Right," Gavin said, nodding. "But not every human has instant access to medics. We learn how to deal with things ourselves. Not because we want to, but because we have to." Zurich shifted. "You did not appear distressed." "I was," Gavin said. "I just didn't show it. Pain isn't always screaming and crying. Sometimes it's just breathing through it." Mib met his eyes. "We thought you were dying." Gavin sighed. "I wasn't. But I get it. You weren't wrong to be concerned." There was silence for a moment. Then Zurich said, "Dren believes you are reckless." "I'm not trying to prove anything," Gavin said. "I was just patching a stabilizer. Look, we're not invincible. But we're good at surviving. That's different." Mib took a step forward. "May we see the wound?" Gavin hesitated, then unwrapped the bandage partway. The cut was closed now, edges red and tight, but no longer bleeding. Zurich leaned in. "It is healing." "Yep," Gavin said. "Takes time. But it'll close up completely in a few days." Mib nodded slowly. "You are not like us." "Neither are you," Gavin said. "That's kind of the point of this program." Over the next week, something shifted. The students didn't avoid him anymore. Mib started asking questions about human medical training. Zurich began carrying a miniature first aid kit clipped to his belt. Even Dren eventually returned, wordlessly joining a systems lecture without making eye contact. Then, 10 days after the incident, a fire suppression system malfunctioned in one of the lower decks. Gavin was there for a maintenance walkthrough with Zurich when the ceiling vent burst and sent a cascade of superheated steam into the corridor. Zurich screamed and dropped, narrowly avoiding the worst of it. Gavin pulled him out of the way, but not before catching a blast to his left forearm and shoulder. The pain was instant and overwhelming. Gavin collapsed next to Zurich, gasping. The skin on his arm was already blistering, red and raw. His vision swam. Zurich scrambled up. "You were burned. Badly." Gavin clenched his teeth. "Yeah. Need mebe. Now." Zurich knelt beside him, trembling. "I don't know what to do." "Help me up," Gavin hissed. "Get me there. Now." Zurich hesitated, then gripped Gavin's good arm and helped him to his feet. The pain made Gavin's knees buckle. "Don't let go," Gavin said. Zurich didn't. The walk to the med bay was a blur of agony. Gavin didn't remember passing out, but when he woke on the cot, his arm was wrapped, treated, and numbed. Kirill stood nearby, and so did all 3 students. "You're lucky," the commander said. Second-degree burns. Painful but recoverable. Mib stepped forward. You saved Zurich. He was closer to the vent, Gavin mumbled. I just pulled him back. You were injured again, Dren said. And again. You did not fall apart. Gavin exhaled slowly. I did. Just not where you could see. Kirill nodded. You will remain here for several days. Recovery will take time. Figures, Gavin muttered. Mib held up a familiar-looking rectangle. We studied the first aid kit. Gavin smiled faintly. Good. You might need it someday. Zurich leaned forward. You are not reckless. You are resilient. Gavin's eyes closed. We try. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Mib said we would like to continue our lessons. Gavin opened one eye. Even if I bleed on you again? Zurich nodded. Especially then. The medbay lights were dimmed when Gavin opened his eyes again. The room had that antiseptic chill common to every clinical environment, but at least it didn't smell like anything. His left arm was encased in a sleek thermal wrap that pulsed now and then, cooling the skin beneath and releasing measured doses of painkillers. He flexed his fingers, slowly testing the limits. The wrap tightened momentarily in response, like it disapproved. Beside him, Zurich was sitting upright on the adjacent cot, legs crossed awkwardly, back straight as a steel rod. I thought you'd gone back to quarters, Gavin said. I have not. I can tell. You were unconscious for 2 hours and 17 minutes. Comforting. Zurich didn't blink. Your neural readings destabilized twice during that interval. Yeah, that's what happens when your skin tries to cook itself. Gavin adjusted the headrest with his uninjured hand. Not to worry, my brain's still in there somewhere. You should not have intervened. You'd be a puddle if I hadn't. I would have been injured. Not liquefied. Let's not test that theory. Gavin stared at the ceiling, which had a subtle shifting pattern meant to keep patients relaxed. It reminded him of lazy clouds. You all right? I was not harmed. That's not what I asked. Zurich hesitated. I have been reviewing your behavior. It does not align with our risk-response parameters. Welcome to humanity. We're a walking contradiction most of the time. You exposed yourself to a known hazard and sustained significant damage to protect another. That's called being a decent person. Zurich's fronts twitched. Your definition of decency includes physical sacrifice. Sometimes, yeah. I don't think I understand your species. You're not alone. A quiet chime sounded near the bed, and a panel unfolded from the wall. A Taryllion medic, shorter and more iridescent than the commander, entered without a word and began scanning Gavin's wrap with a slim instrument. The readings flickered across the panel in a script Gavin couldn't read. You'll need another 40 hours of recovery, the medic said. You are not to leave this unit. Understood. You attempted to remove the wrap earlier. I was itchy. You do not possess the clearance to override medical restraints. Wasn't trying to override, just explore. The medic made a sound that might have been a sigh. Do not explore. When the medic left, Zurich remained silent again. Gavin closed his eyes for a moment, then cracked one open. You're not going to stare at me the whole time, are you? I am analyzing. Maybe analyze from the chair? Zurich moved, but only slightly. Your physiology allows for substantial thermal damage without systemic collapse. Not comfortably. Still, the resilience is considerable. Gotta be with all the accidents we get into. Zurich's head tilted. Are such injuries frequent on Earth? Not daily, but yeah, burns happen. Fires, chemicals, equipment failure. We've got entire hospitals dedicated to treating this kind of thing. Skin grafts, pressure garments, rehab, the whole deal. You recover from complete tissue destruction? Depends how deep. First and second degree, we bounce back. Third degree gets trickier. But yeah, we've got protocols. Surgeons. Even synthetic skin in some places. Zurich tapped his personal console. Your species continues to confuse basic survival with optional suffering. Gavin chuckled. You think this is optional? You could have avoided the injury. True. But then you'd be the one in this bed. And no offense, I don't think you'd have handled it quite as gracefully. I would have followed medical protocol. You mean scream and pass out? Zurich didn't answer. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the occasional hum of the wrap adjusting itself. Eventually, the lights shifted to a soft blue night cycle. You can go, Gavin said. Seriously, I'm not gonna vanish. I've requested a cot be moved here. Why? In case you destabilize again. That's not necessary. I disagree. You're really committed to this guilt thing, huh? I am committed to understanding. The next morning, Gavin woke to find not just Xeric, but Mib and Dren seated awkwardly on the floor near the food dispenser. I'm not dying, he said, voice hoarse. We are aware, Mib replied. Then why? We have compiled a list of scenarios in which you may act irrationally again, Dren said, holding up a datapad. We seek to predict your behavior. Good luck with that. We have included variables such as injury proximity, emotional influence, and threat perception thresholds. Sounds scientific. It is not yielding results. Mib looked up. You are inconsistent. Yeah, that's part of the charm. We find it alarming. Gavin tried to sit up straighter but winced. What exactly are you trying to figure out? Why you persist, Dren said. In what sense? You continue to engage with dangerous systems. You place others before your own well-being. You appear to accept pain as a routine occurrence. That's just how we're wired. Your nervous systems are highly sensitive, Mib said. Pain should be a deterrent. It is. But sometimes other things matter more. Xeric nodded faintly. He said once, we try. Yeah, Gavin said. We do. The door to the medbay opened again, and Commander Kirill entered, his usual fluid motion muted. You are awake, he said. Been awake, Gavin replied. Got a full audience today. I see. Your recovery is proceeding. More or less. Kirill turned to the three students. Your instructors had concerns. They say you've been absent from your other sessions. We were reviewing human behavioral anomalies, Dren said. Has that been productive? Not in a measurable way. Kirill turned back to Gavin. There is a request from Central Command. They want a full report on the incident. Of course they do. They are particularly interested in your decision-making process. Gavin ran a hand through his hair. Tell them I didn't think. I just moved. That is not a satisfactory answer. Well, it's the one I've got. Kirill studied him. You are aware that your actions may have violated safety protocols. Probably. And that you endangered yourself without authorization. Sure. Yet no disciplinary recommendation has been made. Guess they're as confused as everyone else. You have created a precedent. Let's hope nobody follows it. Kirill's eyes narrowed. Yet they might. Gavin looked over at the students. They're smart. They'll think before they act. There's concern that you represent your species inaccurately. Then send a diplomat next time, Gavin said. I'm just a guy who fixes broken panels and occasionally explodes. Kirill didn't respond to that. Instead, he turned to the students. You will resume your standard schedule tomorrow. This observation is concluded. The three stood slowly. Mib lingered. Will you be repaired soon? Working on it. She leaned in slightly. We have requested access to your medical documentaries. Which ones? The ones where humans survive impossible trauma. Oh, Gavin said. Those are movies. We are aware. Mib left with the others and Gavin lay back again, staring at the ceiling. Later that day, a nurse brought him a tablet with a message from Earth. It was from his sister, a trauma nurse in Chicago. She'd seen the report somehow and left a simple note. Only you could get burned in space and still get a lecture. He grinned, then winced as the wrap tightened again. 40 hours passed. Then 40 more. On the third day, Gavin stood up and nearly fell over from dizziness. He caught himself on the wall, breathing hard. Recovery complete, the medic said from behind him. You may resume limited activity. Gavin nodded. I miss walking. You may experience fatigue and residual stiffness. Sounds like a Tuesday. As he stepped out of the medbay, the hallway lights adjusted to his presence. A few crew members nodded as he passed. One even offered a cautious thumbs up. He found the students in the simulator wing, each seated at their respective control consoles. The room was filled with the soft hum of virtual engines and tactical displays. He didn't say anything, just sat down in the observer's chair and watched. After a few minutes, Xeric spoke. You are operational again. Mostly. Do you intend to behave irrationally in the future? Probably. Then we will adjust our models. Mib nodded. We are adding a variable. What's that? The human factor. Dren sighed. It has too many exceptions. Gavin smiled. Yeah, but it's the fun part too. The simulation chamber was unusually warm. Gavin tugged at the collar of his uniform and watched the students run the docking procedure for the third time. None of them were particularly gifted pilots, but they were improving if you ignored the occasional sideways approach and the fact that Dren still tried to brake with the wrong thruster. All right, Gavin said, standing with effort. Pause the scenario. Mib's console hissed as it powered down. She turned with her eyes narrowed. We were within acceptable deviation. Barely. You scraped the hull against the airlock guide. If that had been a real station, you'd have triggered every alarm within 30 clicks. I adjusted course. After impact. Xeric stood, glancing back at the screen. Perhaps we require a more human-style training module. One that includes error recovery. You already have one, Gavin said. It's called not crashing. Dren grumbled something in his native click hum that Gavin chose to interpret as agreement. Or resignation. He sat down again, his joints protesting. The burn had healed well enough, but his energy still lagged. He could feel it in his legs, like everything took just a second longer than it used to. The on-ship medics insisted the fatigue would pass. He wasn't convinced. Mib stepped closer. Why do your simulations include stress parameters? Because reality does. She blinked. But this is not reality. No, Gavin said. But it's meant to prepare you for it. When something goes wrong during docking, you don't get a polite system message telling you to try again. You get alarms, pressure loss, and maybe a fire. You need to be able to think straight under pressure. We do not experience stress in the same way. I've noticed, Gavin said. You freeze. Literally. Xeric unfolded one of his arms. Our species developed under low-threat environments. We evolved collaborative problem-solving mechanisms. And yet none of you thought to seal the breach during the coolant leak simulation last week. Dren's frills stiffened. We were evaluating. You were spectating. Xeric crossed his arms. You imply that your species thrives on danger. No, we don't thrive on it. We survive it. Big difference. Mib tilted her head. And when you fail, people die. Xeric was quiet for a moment. Is that common? No, Gavin said. But it happens. And when it does, the only thing that matters is how well you trained the day before. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, just charged. The kind of silence that meant something had landed. Eventually, Mib turned back to her console. We will run the scenario again. Good, Gavin said. This time, treat the station like it's got people on board. They ran the simulation a fourth time. No collisions. No errors. No sarcastic commentary from Dren. Afterward, Gavin let them go early. It was late, nearing third cycle rest, and most of the ship had gone quiet. Gavin wandered through the empty corridor toward the main observation dome, rubbing his shoulder. His fingers found the edge of the healed burn through the fabric. The skin there still felt tight, like a patch sewn onto an old jacket. The dome was empty, thank God. He stepped inside and sat down with a sigh, watching the slow drift of stars through the curved glass. Somewhere out there, Earth was spinning in its usual chaos. Here, everything felt suspended, like the universe had taken a long breath and was still holding it. Footsteps approached behind him. Not hurried, not hesitant. Xeric settled beside him, folding his legs with a precision Gavin found vaguely unsettling. You are still awake. So are you. I recalibrated the simulator parameters. It was inefficient. You're welcome. Xeric didn't respond to that. Instead, he said, I have been reviewing your species' medical literature. Gavin groaned. That'll put you to sleep. I encountered something unusual. Only one thing? In particular. A case study involving a man with 72% burns who recovered fully. Oh yeah, that guy. I saw that article. They had to keep him in a sterile chamber for months. Skin grafts, synthetic dermal regeneration, nerve remapping. He walked again. Even surfed, I think. Is that normal? God, no. But it's possible. With the right support. Zurich tapped his console. How do your people endure such injury? Honestly, most don't. But some do. And when someone does, we write it down. Pass it on. Teach others how they did it. Why? Because someone else might need to survive the same thing one day. Zurich's gaze lingered on the stars. We share knowledge too, but not pain. Maybe that's the difference. You teach pain. We teach recovery. Zurich was quiet again. Then, I understand now why Dren has changed his approach. Oh, he has begun improvising. He created a redundant oxygen loop in the last simulation. Gavin raised his eyebrows. Did it work? No, but the concept was sound. Progress. Zurich shifted. We have also requested a new module. What kind? One that simulates a high-risk rescue, with limited resources and injury potential. Gavin turned to face him. You sure? The others agreed. We believe it is necessary. He leaned back against the bench. You know, when I got assigned to this program, I thought I'd be teaching technical systems. Protocols? Maybe a few emergency drills. You have done that. Yeah. But apparently I've also become the class example of soft tissue trauma and questionable decision-making. You have been educational. That's one way to put it. They sat in silence for a while, the stars crawling across the dome's view. Eventually, Zurich stood. You should rest. Planning to. Will you recover fully? Physically? Probably. Mentally? Give it time. Zurich paused. You are not weak. Did someone say I was? No, but we assumed it. As Zurich left, the dome door closed with a soft hiss. Gavin stayed a few minutes longer, then pushed himself to his feet and made his way back to quarters. The next morning, the simulator was already running when he arrived. Dren was adjusting the environmental settings manually. Mib was programming a breach scenario. Zurich was reviewing the new rescue module they'd requested. Gavin didn't interrupt. He watched. The simulation began. A malfunctioning cargo vessel, pressurized Opmo compromised. One crew member trapped. Systems failing. Resources scarce. Zurich and Mib coordinated the seal. Dren rerouted power from non-essential systems. They moved quickly, not flawlessly, but with intent. At one point, Mib cut her simulated suit on a jagged panel. The simulator popped a warning. Suit breach left forearm. She hesitated. Then she triggered the repair foam, sealed the breach, and kept going. They completed the rescue with 30 seconds to spare. When the chamber powered down, Gavin was still standing in the corner. I didn't give you that foam, he said. Mib shrugged. We found it. Zurich added, you taught us to prepare. Dren adjusted his console. We adapted. Gavin stepped forward. You're cleared for the advanced drills. We are ready. No, he said. You're getting there. But today, not bad. As they filed out, Gavin lingered, watching the simulation replay on the screen. When Mib sealed the suit, her hands didn't even shake. He powered down the panel, stretched out the stiffness in his shoulder, and walked out of the chamber. Outside, the corridor was filled with the usual mechanical hum of the ship's systems. Nothing urgent, nothing broken. For once, it seemed, everything was holding steady. And for the first time in weeks, Gavin didn't feel like a walking emergency. He was just part of the team.